As we reported last week from the Florida Keys, GA was hard at work bringing in much-needed supplies to communities cut off by road for days. Some pilots we met had flown such missions before, but for me, it was a heady few days in heavily loaded airplanes off short, narrow strips, making decisions on the fly, ripe for mistakes. Alongside me was Richard McSpadden in his Navion. Richard is the executive director of the AOPA Air Safety Institute, and he joins us now to talk about that. So, Richard, what'd you think of that experience last week?
Hey, Tom, it was a moving experience, wasn't it, to see the devastation in the Middle Keys firsthand.
It was.
And it was also rewarding to be able to use your skills and your knowledge and your assets to help people that truly needed it. And we could get into some areas where it didn't look like they were having access any other way for the first couple of days.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So, and from your Air Force training, you've certainly learned how to evaluate a situation quickly. How did that help out for last week?
Yeah, that's funny you asked, Melissa. That kind of struck me there. You know, I have flown a lot of complex and large missions from my Air Force days. And what struck me was, you know, where you get in trouble there is the same way you could get in trouble with the missions we were flying, and that is just the basics. You know, the basics in terms of knowing how your airplanes fly, knowing what the right frequencies are, knowing your route of flight, so that all that stuff is kind of second nature, so you can focus on all the flexibility that's going to come your way, whether it be how the airplanes are loading or what airport you got to go into or the weather that you're going to divert around. So I found myself going back to spending a lot of time on the basics, making sure I knew my airplane, knew the frequencies, knew the route of flight, and who I was flying behind or in front of. A lot of study there I think is helpful.
Yeah. One thing I noticed was the heaviness of the airplane. You know,
yeah.
I fly my airplane a lot pretty heavy because we use it for missions around here. We're hauling people and gear and all kinds of stuff all over the place. So I'm kind of used to that, but I could see where somebody who's used to flying with only maybe one other person on board, when you were flying heavily loaded, it makes a lot of difference in the handling capabilities of the airplane.
Yeah, it does, and it was noticeable, and I don't know what you thought, but it's more noticeable the tighter you go into, you know, so
yeah.
You and I flew into some pretty narrow strips in there with potholes and pretty weak shoulders, and we didn't know a lot about the airports, and so I agree with you, the performance of the airplane is really noticeable when you're trying to get the most out of it.
So what advice would you have for other pilots who may think about going down and helping out after Maria gets done with us?
You know, my advice would be make sure you're ready and your airplane's ready. So if you think your airplane has any kind of issue, the biggest thing you don't want to do is go down there and be part of the problem, right? We're going down there to rescue, not to be rescued.
Right.
And so that would be make sure your airplane's ready to fly, oil is changed, tires are set, you know, all that, no kind of issues with your airplane, because there's not a lot of support for you down there. That's the way you have to think about it.
Yeah.
So, Richard, the Air Safety Institute has a special course for pilots flying humanitarian missions.
We sure do. It's a public benefit flying course, and it's a really good course. It helps walk you through some of the things we just talked about to make sure that you're ready, your airplane's ready, and some things to think about that are unique to the kind of public benefit flying that help you not get too wrapped up in the mission focus so that you kind of lose track of it. All has to be done safely.
All right. Thanks, Richard. Thanks for your help last week. Very important stuff. And also important, make sure you bring what is really needed for first responders and those impacted by such events. See the list of suggested items on our website, and if you can't fly, consider supporting others through contributions to Aerobridge, Operation Airdrop, and many other organizations that help organize humanitarian flights.